this particular video, I will be discussing reading a book. Now, when you're reading a book, we might often find as individuals diving into said story, you would essentially relate to one character, whether they be the protagonist or the antagonist, the anti-hero. You would essentially find that in reading a story, you essentially arise at understanding where you personally, in your personality, tend to attach to a protagonistic or antagonistic set mind. Now, in this particular analysis, you could actively find that when you read a book, you relate or identify with a character. When reading the Bible, however, how come no one relates or identifies with Christ? Very few do. And so, Christ being the protagonist behind said biblical tale within the Holy Bible, we essentially see that even in the story of said protagonist is all a constant, you could say, not direct opposition, but of a, you could say, dismissal. In the last moments, the three favorites of Jesus' disciples would all essentially deny their relationship. They would deny Jesus, resulting in them essentially saying they are of an opposing. While still following Christ, however, the idea invited into this particular tale regarding Jesus Christ and his disciples is that he was of a guiding force to his opposing followers. And in being opposing followers, he would essentially create a reflective thought in each of his interactions, no matter the particular disciple. As an example, in Matthew 15:21 to 28, you find the tale of a Canaanite woman. In the tale of the Canaanite woman, she is not even of a disciple status to Jesus, but she is simply a woman in desperate need. She comes screaming, "Jesus, my Lord, please help me." To which the disciples essentially tell the woman to leave Jesus alone and to step away. Jesus then acknowledges the Canaanite woman, and he asks her, essentially, what is going on? The woman then explains to Christ, "I have a daughter. She is extremely ill as she is continuously engaging in adultery." Jesus then states, "You do not feed the dogs the bread you would feed your child off your table." To To which the Canaanite woman says, "But my Lord, even the dogs eat the crumbs of the bread off the floor." To which Jesus replies, "You have a great mentality. You are right, and your daughter is healed." Because based on this particular statement, the mother essentially states exactly what the daughter needs to hear. It is not Jesus that specifically speaks it. It is her, the Canaanite woman, that says what the daughter needs to hear, which is in adultery, you're essentially letting the dogs eat the crumbs off the floor. Now, in this particular analysis, I'm not putting down the woman in that particular notion, but in the pursuing of, say, being treated as a crumb for men as dogs, which men will chase and chase and chase and chase and chase and chase for the smallest amount of what makes them feel good. But at your table, you do not feed the bread of the children to the dogs. It is not him that specifically speaks what the daughter needs to hear. It is the mother in her own statement that reflects why the daughter is the way she is at that particular moment. A thought-invoking idea, which in creating a thought-invoking idea, a person essentially answers what they need to hear. Do they choose to hear what they are essentially saying is what they need to hear? That is entirely up to the person. And in this particular analysis, you could actively find that the protagonist, Christ, is continuously placing reflective thoughts for those around him to essentially say what they need to hear. It is not him that is directly speaking it for them. He is simply placing a statement that essentially causes them to say what they need to hear. The healing aspect of things is once the individual invites what they have spoken into their life. This is what is known as the miracles of Christ. Without even having to place his hands upon you, he could actively cause you to realize where you need to heal by creating a thought-provoking statement that resulted in you as the individual in the interaction with Christ stating exactly what you would have had to be told at that moment. Now, in understanding how psychology works, you can actively say that unless if a person comes to a realization on their own, you can tell them, you can tell them, you can tell them, you can tell them. Until they realize it on their own, they won't make that connected dot, you could say. And the only way you can actively get a person to realize something is by making them say what they need to hear, creating a healing. This is one form of the miracles of Christ. And in understanding that if you read a book and you understand how story is told, may essentially understand now where in the analysis of the self, such as the book known as the Bible is the oldest self-reflection text we have ever had as a human race. It is not a direct physical literature. It is meant to be of a internal reflective literature, which means in its reflective patterns or interactions, it is meant to create thought-provoking or thought-invoking ideas or statements that, based on you now relating to a character, you may now feel or essentially create your own internal reflectness or reflectedness. And in this particular moment, what do you think happens when you reflect internally? You are actively telling yourself what you need to hear. Another miracle of Christ, which even thousands of years beyond his death, simply by understanding how to read a book, you could essentially arrive to another healing, another miracle of Christ. Thank you.